Right. So this session is going to be recorded and will be available on the PCO website where so you can go back to it, but just you actually won't be able, because of the way this was set up, we won't be seeing you and we won't be hearing you, but we can see your questions. So let's get started. This is the part that always makes me nervous. So cross your fingers. And that seemed to go okay. I hope so. All right, so this session is the first session on bylaws training. My name is Nancy Angevine Sands. I am a family engagement consultant with my company called With Equal Step. I am supporting the Parent and Community Engagement Office this year to support school councils and particularly to support you around bylaws. So you will see my email at the bottom of the page, and I'll give it to you at the end as well. As you're going through your bylaws, if something comes up or you have any questions, please, please, please do not hesitate to write to me, and I will try to answer your questions. So I'm going to look at why do we have bylaws. I'm going to give you some hints on how to understand and work through the template. We're going to look then at the process for doing the bylaws and submitting them. And then, as I said, at the end, we will have a question and answer session. So we'll begin with an acknowledgement of traditional lands. We are acknowledged that we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and the Inuit peoples. So the question that I've been getting a lot this year and last school year is why? Why do we need to have bylaws? Our school council has bylaws, or our school council has never had bylaws and we don't need them. Well, first of all, Regulation 612, which is the section of the Education Act that governs school councils, says that every school council must have bylaws that cover how elections will be run, that cover conflict of interest and conflict resolution. It then goes on to say that councils may create their own bylaws to assist in the running of their school council. The Parent Community Engagement Office has always had a template that was available for any school council that wanted to use it to give them ideas of how they to write their own. But they determined this year, after a long process of trying to get councils to write their bylaws, that a template was needed, a universal template was needed that would ensure that bylaws were embedded in council work. And using the same template for all of our schools across the board will ensure that there's coherence from school to school to school, that all of our councils are running on the same basic principles, with the options of adding some added things that may be important to the individual councils. And this is very important so that we don't have one council in Scarborough doing something that's completely different from a council in Etobicoke. It's also important because at some point, believe me, this is going to happen. At some point, there may be a problem within your council, a question of how something is supposed to run, a question of why we're doing it this way and not that way. The council that I was in before, they didn't do anything like this. Why are we doing it? And the bylaws will give you the basis to do that. So what do I mean by that? Well, I like to use metaphors a lot. And I think of 612 as being the basic outline of a house. If you think about a house, the 612 is the basic outline. It tells us that it's going to have at least a main floor, and it's going to have a roof, and it will be sitting on a foundation. The template is there to give us some more information. It's going to tell us how the house needs to be built, that you have to have the foundation, and then you'll have the floors and the first floor, that you have to have walls and a roof to protect it. We will be discussing later on about how you will have the option of adding additions. Now, this is the options that are in the template. And it is also, if you already have bylaws and there are parts of your bylaws that you don't see in the template, then as long as they don't sit in violation of what Regulation 612 says, you can add those additions. So that if I keep with my house metaphor, your house may look a little bit different. You've got a second floor and the school next to you, they don't have that, but still your basic construction is the same. Now, as I always say to school councils, what I want you to build is the framework for your house. Your bylaws should not be so particular that, if I keep with my metaphor, that I know exactly what the inside of the house looks like, that I know whose bedroom is whose and where the furniture is going to be placed and what color the walls are going to be. Though you want to leave a little bit in your bylaws that allows for each council to add their own particular flavor to the bylaws. And I hope that this metaphor becomes a little bit clearer as we move along. So, what do you need to know about the template? And I guess I should first say, I hope that you all know that on the school council page of the TDSB website, there is a link, and I'm going to be giving the link to you at the end of this presentation. There's a link to the template, and there's two. There is a PDF document that you can print off and work as a council or a committee to decide what options you want. And then there's the electronic template that you have to fill in. All right. So when I'm talking about a template, I'm talking about those two things. So what do you need to know about that template? Well, the template is a mixture of mandatory and optional articles. And all of them relate to Regulation 612, to TDSB policies and procedures, or Ontario Ministry of Education policies and procedures. The options are for you to decide what works best for your community, right? What works for the elementary school in my community may not work as well for the elementary school just down the road. And we suggest that you form a committee that takes the PDF that I talked about and looks at the options that are available, and in consultation with your broader parent and caregiver community, decides what options they are going to recommend go forward. And then the committee would take those recommendations to council, and they will make the final decision. So let me give you an example. So this is an example about the nomination section of the bylaws. We can see that the first part of this, Q7.1 and Q7.2, are mandatory, and it's based on Regulation 612. But the second section, which you will see down at the bottom, and of course my cursor isn't working, so I can't show you, but Q7.3 and Q7.4, this part is optional. And it says the principal may conduct a lottery of candidate names to determine randomly selected ballot positions for each candidate. This is in the election. The names of the successful candidates shall be shared with the school community and posted on the school website. So your choice is, yes, we want to include that in our school council bylaws, or no, we don't want to include it. And that part, the part about the principal doing the ballot for the lottery for name position and sharing the names, that's up to you to decide. So what if you aren't sure while you're doing that? Well, I want to give you this caveat. If it goes into your bylaws, then you have to use it, or you have to be planning to use it in the very near future. You can't put it in there and just, we'll decide on a whim if we want to use it. If it's in your bylaws, it's because when your council was deciding on the bylaws, this is what they considered to be important to build the framework of their house, of their council. All right. And always keep in mind that school councils should always work to be transparent, inclusive, and accountable to their parent community and to the broader community and to their school community. So let me give you an example. The section on school council social media accounts is optional. And there are, as you can see, a number of points that are there. Now, some of our school councils use social media quite a lot. And so they would probably, I would hope, decide that, yeah, we're going to include this in our school council bylaws. But we do have some school councils that don't use social media. They don't use Facebook or Twitter. It's just not, they don't use WhatsApp. It's not part of what they do. So they might decide, nah, you know what? We don't use social media. I'm not going to put it in. Here comes a little caveat. If when you're working through this and when you're talking with the parents and caregivers to try to decide what they think should happen, if you start to hear as part of the, or the council is hearing too as part of the conversation, we don't like hear from council very much, or, do we not have a Facebook page? Do we have a Twitter account? Do we use WhatsApp? Should we be using some way so that we can hear from you and when we can hear what you're saying? So the council may decide, you know what, we haven't used social media, but we're starting to hear from our community that it might be something we should consider. Then you would probably decide to put it in because you want to be prepared, because you can foresee that within the next year and a half, social media accounts might be part of your business plan, and you would need this. Now, you can always do amendments to your bylaws. We advise you to look at your bylaws every 3 to 4 years, because our schools, our communities evolve. And what we decide this year is really good for the school community. In 2026, it might not be so good. So even if you put something, if you put something in and you decide, say you put in the social media account and you never do it. In a couple of years, when you look at it, you can do an amendment to take it out. And you should consider the direction that your future council should take. Remember, I said I don't want you to do so nitpicking little things that they don't have leeway to do some different actions that they would like to do. But you should also think, this is where our council is right now. This is where we would like it to be in a year or 2 years. And these are the bylaws that we need to choose, the options that we need to choose to make sure we get there. This is what the framework of our house should look like. And school councils down the way, they can amend that. So I just want you to see the bylaw amendment part. It is optional. And you may choose, you're given one of 2 choices again, that you can review the bylaws in 3 or 4 years and make any amendments. Or the next one is more detailed. It tells you how you would go about making amendments to your bylaws. Or third option, you're not putting anything in your bylaws on amendments. Right? So these are just some ideas and some samples of what the template option parts look like. Sometimes there's an option and you just say yes or no. And sometimes there's 2 or 3 different options and you have to choose one. And I'll just stop for a second. I hope I said, I can't remember. I hope I said that if you have any questions as we go along, put them in the Q&A section. So one of the longer sections of the bylaws is on conflict resolution. There's also a section on conflict of interest that's very important, but the conflict resolution part is quite long. And I'm just advising you, we'll take a bit of time for you to read through and think about and consult, right? So the mandatory part is conflict resolution is school council shall establish a conflict resolution process for internal school council disputes that is in accordance with any applicable policies established by the TDSB. That's the mandatory part. Then the optional parts are what I've shown on the left of the screen in the blue. There's a section on general principles, just general principles about conflict resolution, what it would look like when you might see it. There's definitions of the different people that are involved in conflict resolution process, about different aspects, just so that you understand it. Then there is a couple of options for the process of how you will do conflict resolution at your school. One of the options under the process is to use one of the options that is provided in the template, or if you already have a conflict resolution process in your old bylaws that has worked for you in the past, that you can see will continue to work for you for the next couple of years, you can also choose to put that conflict resolution process in. There's a place where you choose that option, and then you have to upload your conflict resolution wording into the space. The next part of the conflict resolution process talks about the suspension of a member. There are parts of it that are mandatory, and there are parts of it that are optional. Regulation 612, I should say first, does not allow for a member to be removed from council. And we could have discussions about whether that is wise or not, but it's part of the Education Act. You cannot remove a member from council, no matter what they do. However, you may suspend them for a period of time. And you are given 3 options for doing that. And I'm not going to go through all of it, but I just want to explain sort of the outline. The first option for the suspension of a member involves the principal. If the principal decides that a member is becoming disruptive and is harming the workings of the school council, the principal may decide to suspend that member in consultation with board staff. The second option is the school council may decide to remove that member in consultation with the principal and perhaps the superintendent. Or the TDSB staff, namely probably the superintendent, can choose to halt all operations of the school council for a time frame. And what you will see under this option is if you choose the option where school staff, board staff can come in and halt the operations, and that's not about the suspension of a member, that's halting all operations of the council for a defined period of time. So if you choose that option, you also have to choose what's the time frame. Okay, so I put this up here because this is a really, really important section of the bylaws, and something probably one of the sections, other than the part of memberships and how many parent members do you want, this is a really important part. It's a section that, in working with school councils for over the last 15 years, when there hasn't been a conflict resolution process, issues become more and more difficult to handle. So that's what I want to say about the template. Now I'm going to take a few minutes to go through the bylaws process. Step one, the school council will print off the PDF that is available on the bylaws page of the TDSB website. And you will print off the PDF and you will use it to consult with the school council members and the parent caregivers for input. And as I've already suggested, it might be a good idea to get a committee together to do that. You only need 2 or 3 people who are willing to take a bit of time, go through it, talk to people on their own or send out surveys and decide which options do you want. That's the first step. The second step is once the committee has this, if you have a committee or the council has decided, they will review in a meeting that is advertised to your community, a school council meeting that's advertised to the community. We're going to be looking at the bylaws. They will review the template and they will vote on the optional articles that have been chosen. The school council may also choose to add any articles from their previous bylaws, and they must vote to ratify their inclusion in the final document. Right? So this is where it becomes not confusing, but just there's 2 parts to this. So keep with me here. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to vote to approve the optional articles of the template. And then if you have bylaws already, and if there are articles of those bylaws that you think were missing in the template that you want to keep, you're going to vote at that time to ratify their inclusion in the final bylaws document. Next step, the chair, co-chair will complete the template. The link is on the TDSB website, and they will submit that template no later than December 23rd. That is the last day of the first term of school. Right? So you'll fill out the template and you'll send it in. And it's the chair that has to do it because a copy of it will come back to the chair, it will come back to the principal, and if you are a model school, it will come back to the CSW. Then a Word and PDF version of the school council submission will be sent, as I said, to the chair, the principal, and the CSW. And you should get that back, I'm hoping, within a week. Right? For school councils that are merging their previous bylaws articles with the template, the final version, because you can't, and I should have said this, you cannot merge the addition, you vote at the beginning to what articles from your previous bylaws you want to keep, but there's no place on the template where they can be added. So what you'll have to do is when you get the PDF and Word version, you will have to cut and paste the articles from your previous bylaws into your PDF or Word version and submit that to the Parent Community Engagement Office no later than January 16th. So December 23rd is your template. Then if you're not adding any articles, you're done, you're finished. If you are adding articles from your previous bylaws, then it has to be into the PCO by January 16th. And then a copy will be sent, then a copy should be made available in your school for all parent and caregivers to see, and a copy of the bylaws should be made available to all of your school council members. And I should add that each year subsequent to this, the first thing that you should do is give a copy of your bylaws to your new school council members. It doesn't have to be a hard copy. If you have, hopefully, all schools have websites, and hopefully you're using the school council portion of the school's website to things like your minute and your agenda on. You can post your bylaws there. But it's also a good idea to have at least one hard copy of your bylaws in a binder that stays in the office or that stays in the library, someplace that if a parent wants to come in and look at it, they may do that. Okay, so that's the process. From printing off a copy of the PDF and consulting, to the school council voting to approve it, to deciding if you're adding any old articles, submitting it, and then posting it so that it's available to your members and your parent and caregiver community. So I keep talking about the website. This is it here. If you go to tdsb.on.ca, and then at the top of the page, you click community, and then you go over and you go down, you see how to get involved, and then school councils, and then bylaws, or screenshot this, the website here. All of the information is on that page. The link to the initial PDF that I talked about for consulting is there, and the link to the template that you have to fill out is there. As well, the time frame that I just went through is also there. And again, December 23rd for the template, and January 16th if you are adding anything to it. I hope to come back to that. So now, oh, I did that in half an hour. I'm really good at that. So now I'm going to take your questions. And again, there is my email. If you're like me, you don't think of the questions until it's too late. So be sure to write it down in case something comes up. And I will, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop this share first. So I'm going to just go back. Sorry. I just want to mention the upcoming workshops. There are 6 of them all together. On the 19th of October, the next training session will be on school council operations, everything you need to know, I hope, on how to run a successful school council. The next one is in between that, the finance department is doing something on finances and fundraising. October 27th, there will be a workshop called What? No Fundraising? And where I will be encouraging you to, I will be sharing with you what effective parent caregiver engagement is and how you can do it with little or no fundraising. Then on November the 1st is the next training session is called Going to the Margins. And in that, I'm going to be giving you ideas for how you can get what some people like to call the hard to reach parents and caregivers in your community. Those people who are at the margins, who have a voice, but we don't hear their voice. On November the 9th, I'm going to do a session on the school improvement plan, because you are required both by the province and the board to have a say in the writing of the school improvement plan. So we'll be looking at what that will look like. And then there's 2 more sessions on bylaws coming up because it's so important. So I'm just going to stop this share, and then I'm going to go to the questions. So please specify any parent caregiver of a student in the school who is seeking election must be nominated or self-nominated in writing. A person is not qualified to be a parent caregiver if they're employed at the school. So that's directly out of Regulation 612. Are there more specific guidelines on being employed at the school? For example, if a parent is a substitute lunchroom supervisor and fills in at the school, or a parent who has done a consultation for the TDSB at the school, is it only for the current school year? Okay, that's a good question, and it's one that comes up every year. So the regulations say if you are employed, if you get a paycheck from the TDSB for whatever job you do at the school where your children go, then you cannot serve on the school council. If you get a paycheck from the TDSB and you work in a school that's not where your kids go, then you may serve on council, but at the election, you must make it known that you are a TDSB employee. Now, I will also say that that doesn't stop you from serving on a school committee. And school committees are a really good place. School committees are where a lot of the work of a council should be done anyway. So you can still serve on committee. You just can't serve as a voting member. You can still come to council meetings. You can still voice your opinion. You can still bring things up that you would like to have covered, but you cannot be a voting member. I hope that that helps. If you were an employee of the board in years gone past, but you are no longer receiving a paycheck from them, then yeah, you're no longer an employee of the board. Now you may serve on council. Yes, recordings of the session will be made available, and I believe they will be made available on the PCEO YouTube channel, which if you go to YouTube and do TDSB PCEO, I think it comes up. Are there any more questions? You're all clear about picking options. You're all clear about the process for doing it. Okay. Yeah. Oh, another question came in. Is there a link for the webinar on the 27th? Yes, there should be. The parent and community, I think if you go, I'm sorry, I leave that for other people to do who are much better at that than I am. I think if you go to the workshop page on the school council page for the TDSB website, there should be a registration link there. Yeah. Yes, I know that you will all have questions once you start this process, and don't get frustrated. And if you do get frustrated, walk around the room a couple of times. Know that I am always here to answer your questions with equalstep@gmail.com. And I'm here to help you through this. And know that while this is a I'm not downplaying the effort that is required to do this at all. But I assure you that it's well worth it. And it's not a fake metaphor that I'm using when I use the metaphor of the house. You would not want to be in your home if there wasn't a foundation underneath it, because I mean, look at what happened down south with the hurricane. There were houses there that didn't have a foundation, and off they went. I've seen that happen with school councils. I've seen them get into terrible positions because they didn't have a foundation. If a parent came in and said, why are you doing that? Say, well, it's in our bylaws, and this is the way that we need to do it. The regulations say that we have to do it. TDSB policy says that we have to do it. Our parent caregiver community decided that this is the way that worked best for us. So in the end, the effort that you will make over the next couple of weeks to do these bylaws will be well worth it. It will give you a firm foundation to go forward over the next couple of years and do the really important work that you have to do. Any more questions? I think that's the fastest webinar I've ever done. 7:08, and you guys are done. Thank you so much for joining me. Oh, a question came in. How does one post to the school's TDSB website? I would like to be able to post bylaws there. I'm not sure. Oh, the school's TDSB website. Oh, okay. So what you would do is you go to your principal and you would say, I understand that on the TDSB, the school's TDSB website, there's a section for school councils. If you go to that page and now for your school, it's TDSB/ and the school, because there's some schools have another website. So just make sure it's the TDSB one. And you will see down on the left-hand side of the page, there's a part where it says school council. So you would say to your principal, yeah, I just want to post some stuff on the school council section. And they have to do it. I'm pretty sure they have to do it, or they would ask, they have some, maybe someone from IT does that. But you can post your bylaws there. You can post your minutes of your meetings. You can post your agendas. You can post anything that's interesting that's happening. It's a really great opportunity for you to post things for your parent and community, parent caregivers to look at and to know that here's the place where we can go. But you go through your principal. Anything else? I will stay on for another 10 or 15 minutes. If those of you who think you've got it, then thank you very much for joining us. Thank you from me. Thank you very much for all of the work that you do for your school, for your students, and for your parent caregivers. I cannot overstate how important it is.